Good morning and welcome back to my channel, Fiddlesticks and Stitches. I hope you're having a good day, and I hope that you are enjoying my videos. I'm not a professional videographer, and I don't do a lot of fancy things with my videos. But I hope that they are a blessing to you, and I hope that you will subscribe and like and share. I'm very happy to have any of my videos shared. Today I'm going to talk to you about slip pockets, and I'm going to teach you how to make an absolutely beautiful, perfectly square cornered slip pocket. And this will work on almost any kind of fabric, faux leather, that kind of thing, as long as you follow the basic instructions that I'm going to give you today. So, sometimes when you make a slip pocket, you'll get, when you turn it right side out, you'll get corners that are more rounded than they are right angle. Sometimes they'll have a little wonky place in them where it sticks out, and it's just not pretty at all. You'll see, and you try and try and try with your turning thing. This one's not too bad. This is almost a right angle. This one has a place in it that turned sort of square, and I couldn't get it turned the rest of the way out. These are old slip pockets that I have made as I was working at trying to figure out how to make a really beautiful slip pocket. And I know that this is on the inside of the bag most of the time, but you want to make a very high quality product. Don't skimp. Do the best you can, and that way when you collect the payment, if you sell a bag, or when you see the smile on somebody's face when you give them this bag as a gift, you'll know that you have put your very best into this bag. Don't look at some kind of crooked stitching and say, I'm okay with that. If you're not, if you are okay with it, good, but if you're not, fix it and make it right. Don't have to be OCD about it. Don't have to be a perfectionist. Just remember that you are offering somebody something in one way or another that you have made with your own hands. And the art of the hand is a special thing. It is a reflection of you and how much you love doing what you're doing. So here is a slip pocket. Here's my bag. This is the interior, and this is the large size Harlequin bag, and this is the interior of the lining, and here's my slip pocket. And my slip pocket, I cut it on the fold like this, and it's 8.5 by 5.5, and I woven fused two to half of it. I just did half. You don't have to do the whole thing, it's not necessary. In fact, you could probably get away without any interfacing, but I like them to feel sturdy, and they are going to be used quite a bit. So this is fused already. So now we're going to take our slip pocket and we're going to fold it on itself, right sides together, and we're only going to sew the side seams. You know how the patterns will usually direct you to come across the bottom and stop, come over here, start, come over and around, and then turn through this little bitty place. Depending on how you have cut your fabric, fabric has a grain, and depending on how you have cut it, that could be part of the problem of your corners not turning out right or very, clean. We want sharp, right angle corners on our slip pockets, on all 4 corners. So I'm only going to sew the side seams, and I'm going to sew this with a domestic machine, and I'm going to use my Bernina 770, and I'm going to use about a 2.8 stitch length. So we're going to go over to the machine now, and we're going to sew this, and I'm just going to sew straight down at 1/4 of an inch all the way, and I'll back stitch at the beginning and the end on both sides. Alright, I'm at my machine. I've got my 37D foot on, that's 1/4 of an inch, and my dual feed is engaged here in the back. Anytime you're using a D foot on a Bernina, you always have to make sure you have your dual feed engaged. And I'm just going to sew down this short edge. I'm going to back stitch. And I'll just take it right down to the bottom edge, and I'll back stitch at the bottom also, trying to keep my hands out of the way so that you can see the machine working, see what I'm doing. Alright, here we go. Now we're going to sew the other side. There we go. And my phone. I guess it's going to ring forever. I thought it would quit. Okay, now we're going to go down the other side. And I like sewing from the top down. I don't usually sew from the bottom up. I sew from the top down. But either way is just fine. Either way is just fine. You just want to make sure that you have a nice, clean beginning and ending to your seam. Okay, now the next thing that people usually do is trim corners, and today we are not going to do that. These corners are going to stay right here. I'm not going to clip them off at an angle or put any clips in them whatsoever. They're going to stay just like this, and in the end they will help support our square corner just like that. Okay, let's go back over to my workstation, and we'll turn this right side out and move on with making a beautiful slip pocket. My next step in the order of making a perfect slip pocket is to press up about 1/4 of an inch. You can even press it up a little more if you want to. This is a slip pocket, so it's not imperative that this fold on the bottom down here is exactly, it just needs to be straight. So I will fold up about 1/4 of an inch along the bottom on this one side, and I'm going to press this with my iron, and then I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to fold it up to where it meets and matches up on the other side. And you can't really press it all the way across, but you can get pretty close to these ends. So from about here to here, I can put my iron in here and press. So I'm going to go do that now, and I'll be right back, and we'll turn this slip pocket. Alright, I've got this pressed up on both sides, and now we're going to turn our pocket right side out, and we've got this great big nice easy opening to do that with. And I'm just going to put my hand in here like this, actually my other hand, and I'm going to turn this seam allowance right on the stitching. I'm going to turn it right on the stitching and put my thumb kind of on the point, my middle finger inside, and my thumb kind of on the point, and I'm going to turn it right side out, just like that. Then I'm going to do the very same thing on the other side, and it must turn toward the interfacing. You're going to be on the interfacing side, and you're going to turn it right on itself, and reach in with your middle finger and your thumb and grab the point, just like that, and you're going to turn it right side out. And it's so easy. And it doesn't wrinkle your pocket quite as bad. So now I have this little tool from OESD, and it has a small end and a large end, and it has a little ball on the end of each one. And you know, some people use a knitting needle, and some use a point turner, and just anything that they can find to push out the corners. But that's the problem. You have to think about how the fabric is. You can't bunch it all up in the corner and have a nice 45-degree angle corner. So I know that this side is my interfacing side. So I'm coming in on top of the seam. My little turner is right here, right underneath my finger, and it's right on top of the seam. And I'm going to just gently flatten out the fold that I made with my fingers when I turned this right side out. And then I'm going to go along my seam with my turner and flatten my seam with my fingers, just like so. And I'll give it a little finger press, and I might even clip it. And I'm going to press this with my iron here in a little bit, but I want you to see my corner. It is absolutely perfect. It doesn't look misshapen. It doesn't look all bunched up. It looks really nice. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the other corner. I'm using the small end of my OESD tool. And this side's my interfacing side, so I feel the little ball right under my finger. And I'm coming right up to the corner. And let me zoom you in, maybe. And I'm just going to flatten the seam and gently, I'm hardly moving my turner. And then I'm going to come down the seam just like I did before and press it with my fingers. And I'll probably clip it. Let me see if I can get this just a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and then we'll clip this. And there is another perfect right angle corner. So now you're wondering how we're going to get perfect right angles at the lower corners, aren't you? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that, and it's just as easy as the top. And so now I'm going to go and I'm going to top stitch across here and make sure that I get my top stitching. I'm going to be about 1/8 of an inch or so in from the top, and I'll probably use about a 3.0 stitch length for my top stitching. So I'll go do that and then I'll be back and I'll show you how to make perfect bottom corners. Okay, look at those beautiful right angled corners. Nice and flat. They're flat, they're not a bunch, so it made it easy to top stitch. So now we have this lower edge that we have to deal with, but we've already pressed to where most of it is lined up and fits. So the parts we have left are these two lower corners. So remember, we pressed, when we did these, we pressed the seam toward the interfacing. So we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. We're going to push it toward the interfacing, and we're going to fold this down about 1/4 of an inch. And we'll kind of line it up. Sometimes you'll have to use your eye a little bit. Line this up, and you're going to fold this right around the corner, and there is a perfect lower corner. So now we'll clip that, and we have everything else pretty much lined up across here. So let's go ahead and clip, about halfway maybe over. We still have to have room to get our fingers in there to turn this one. So now this one, we're going to turn it toward the interfacing, and we're going to fold it down. And you may think that this looks like, oh my word, it's taking a lot of time to do this. I'll never get my bags finished if I fiddle with things like this. But if you stop and figure up, there's another perfect corner. It's just perfect. Right angle. If you stop and figure up the time you spend pushing out corners, and then even maybe you're a little aggressive and you actually push your turner all the way through and you ruin your pocket, you have to make another one. Or if you take a look at your work and you say, gosh, that just looks like a kindergartner did it, and you want it to look better, this doesn't take any more time to do a slip pocket this way and have perfect right angle corners every time than it does to do it the other way, where you have this wad of fabric in each corner, and it's hard to top stitch and to sew the pocket onto the bag, the lining of the bag. And you can even do this with slip pockets on the outside of a bag too. But there's no need to trim corners when you do it this way. And they actually help to reinforce and stabilize these top two corners where it's going to be taking, the pocket's going to be taking the most abuse. And on that, when I stitch this pocket onto my lining piece, this particular pattern, I put the pocket 1.5 inches down from the top, and I center it. And when I start to sew on here, I'm going to put this ruler behind here so you can see the pocket, because it's hard to see it here, isn't it? And I'll use this for a pointer. But when I stitch this pocket to the lining, I'm going to go down this side, across the bottom, and up the other side. And when I come to the top up here, I'm going to stitch this corner at an angle, and it's going to come across to here to 1/8 inch. I'll start at the edge, come across to 1/8 inch, and then I'll do 1/8 of an inch all the way around, and I'll stop over here, and it's about 1/4 inch before I get to the corner, and I'll angle off this way and backstitch. And these little angles at the top corners help tremendously with the stretch and the stress that these slip pockets take. So that's just a little tip for you. So I'm going to go and stitch this pocket on here, and I'm going to come back and I'll show you my angled corners, and I'll show you how I did that. Okay, I'm at the machine and I'm gonna do the angle at the top corner of the slip pocket. I realize you can't see terribly well, but hopefully you can see that this is the way the pocket would be if it were straight, coming straight on. I'm going to sew right down the seam, but we're going to do this at a little bit of an angle. And this foot is a 1/4 inch foot. So I'm going to set my foot on here at an angle so that it touches the outer point, just touches the outer point, and is about making a perfect triangle across there. I don't know if that's 45 degrees, I think so. And I'm going to drop my needle. Now I'm going to back stitch until I see the top of the pocket. And now I'm going to come forward until I get to about 1/8 inch before the side seam. So I think I'm about there. Nope, I got to take one more little stitch. Now then, here we go. So now I'm going to take off and I'm going to top stitch this pocket on. I just have 2 pins holding this on here, so I better get one of them out of here because it's going to get in the way. I'm going to just top stitch this on at 1/8 inch all the way around. Take out my clip when I get here to this corner, and oh my goodness, these corners look beautiful. And on cotton fabric, you would not need to use a hump jumper or anything like that, because this is nice and flat the way we've done these corners. If you're using waterproof canvas, or maybe you're using vinyl, faux leather, something like that for your slip pocket, then you would probably need your hump jumper. I gotta work with this here just a little bit. We got a little bit of a roll going here, but I'm just about to have it worked out. So we'll come clear down here to the corner, and I'll stop at 1/8 inch before the end of the pocket, and then I'm going to come back up. I'm still at 1/8 inch all along here. And when I get up here, on my Bernina, on the foot, there's a little notch here on the side that shows me 1/4 inch before I get to the end of the fabric. And remember, over here on our beginning corner, we used 1/4 inch as our guide, my foot. So when I get up to that notch, then I'm going to lift my presser foot, turn to my 45-degree angle, and I'm going to stitch off the pocket, back stitch, and I'm done. So here's what the back looks like. So maybe this will give you a good idea of what the front should look like. There's the back. It's got the angle. Here's the other side. Got the angle. And here's the front. And now you have a beautiful slip pocket with perfect 45-degree corners. No lumps, no bumps, no rounded corners, nothing out of shape. And you've got your angle stitching at the top to help with making your pocket very strong and will last forever. So I hope you enjoyed this. Have a great day sewing.